In February 1997, scientists at the Roslin Institute announced that they had created the first clone of an adult animal. Dolly was greeted with global astonishment. President Clinton ordered an inquiry. So did Jacques Santerre. The British government withdrew research funds. But scientist Ian Wilmot's achievement was bracketed with those of Galileo and Darwin. The future that Dolly promised seemed awesome. Could we clone human beings? Would the new knowledge help in the treatment of humans, with cancer, with aging, with some of the most terrible afflictions of childhood? A debate began that went far beyond Roslin. A debate not just between scientists and doctors. Dolly had brought home just how far the revolution in genetics has gone, and how no single life on Earth will be untouched by it.
We did hope that if treatment became available, then they would be able to have it, but they are so far down the line with the disease, it would probably almost certainly be too late for our boys now.
Every day I'm confronted with the telephone ringing, telling me there's a new diagnosis, there's an anxious mother on the phone, and I know in my heart there's absolutely nothing we can do.
Our genes are a key for unlocking the secrets of life and death. Scientists all over the world are seeking what has been called the holy grail of modern science. The Human Genome Project is the biggest, most ambitious scientific endeavor since the Apollo space program put a man on the moon. Its goal is to map and sequence every human gene, the basic units of life. There is the promise of remarkable new remedies for the vast catalogue of human suffering.
We're on the edge of a revolution that is far greater in significance than any microcomputer revolution we've ever seen so far. Computers, well, they process information, but they don't change us. The gene technology changes us, our descendants, our diet, and perhaps the potential of all life on Earth.
This knowledge that we get will give us a lot of disease. And we've got so many tickets, and they're so cheap, that it would be very unlucky if we weren't to even win the jackpot.
We receive our genetic inheritance from our parents at our conception. It might mean that we have blue eyes. It might mean a life-threatening illness. All because of one missing or malfunctioning gene, a single gene deficiency. The consequences can be profound.
Simon and Mike have got Hunter syndrome. It's a progressive degenerative disease, and they lack an enzyme that breaks down a certain product called polysaccharides. What that results in is stunted growth, brain damage, heart disease, lots of problems with the lungs, ears, nose and throat problems, so they are both partially deaf.
Bye, Pat.
Bye, Pat. As the children get older, their lives basically go into reverse. What's happened so far with Simon and Mike is that they are both now back in nappies. Their understanding is that of a child much younger than their chronological age. It is expected that they will die before their teens.
Number 2.
So let's think about those disorders that we inherit from our parents that often cause death in young children before the age of 10 or 15 years old. Now, these arise as a consequence of a defect in a single gene. We cannot cure these disorders at the moment. We can treat some of them, Gene therapy gives the only opportunity to actually cure these disorders by putting back into those children the gene which is defective.
Katie is 5. She too is a carrier. So the problems that she sees with her brothers, unless we get some treatment, she could have sons the same as her brothers. It's 50-50.
MPS is one group of genetic disorders which is under intensive research at the moment, mainly because the treatments we have so far for this group of disorders are so unsatisfactory. There is a lot you can do to help the child to live with the disease in as easy a way as possible by palliative therapies, treating the complications of the disease, but that is by no means curable.
Hi Karen, come on in. Come on boys. Oh, that doesn't sound very promising.
No.
Who was that? Simon or Mike? Are you going to come and sit next to me, Simon? Right, good lad.
Most parents of children with genetic disease live in the hope that one day genetic therapy will cure their child of their genetic disease. Our detailed knowledge of the genetic defects causing diseases is still in its infancy, and our abilities to diagnose genetic disorders far outstrips our abilities to treat them.
Hi Bilal. Come and sit next to me, my friend.
Bilal has what is called Hurler's syndrome. MPS comes in various forms and with different degrees of
Oh,
severity.
you're going to be very quiet. How old are you now? 6. Right, when are you 7? June, so you're 7 in June. Come on in, Rajesh.
It would be true to say that there's no genetic disorder so far that's been cured by any form of therapy. Gene therapy is an exciting form of treatment, and it's easy to see why it's caught the public's mind, but it's important to stress that it still is in its infancy. There's still a number of unresolved problems associated with gene therapy before it becomes widely applicable.
The chief way of combating diseases like MPS at present is to have a bone marrow transplant. It can be totally successful, a lifelong cure. But it's a big operation. Not all who have it survive. And it can be difficult finding suitable donors. Scientists are deciphering the chemical language of DNA, the molecular structure which passes our genetic inheritance onto us. You can't cut DNA with a scalpel. The genes can be spliced, and have been in plants and animals. And there have been attempts to manipulate genes within humans. Gene therapy. This is a very sensitive area. To perform gene therapy, you have to get government clearance. That was granted in 1993, when a coordinated attempt was made in America, Europe, and here in London by a team led by Roland Levinsky.
The best results were actually in the British child. The gene was lost after about 9-10 months. And we've had no evidence, this is about 3.5 years ago, we have no evidence whatsoever that that gene is still present. So we haven't got it right. These particular diseases that we're interested in are particularly difficult because we have to get the gene into the stem cell of the bone marrow. Now, the stem cell is a very rare cell. If you can get it into a stem cell, that stem cell divides to give rise to all the cells of the immune system and the blood system and is self-renewing, so it is there for all time. The holy grail would be if we had a little solution in a syringe and the patient came to an outpatient clinic and you just gave an injection into a vein and sent them off and then tested them maybe 2 months later and said, fine, it's working. That would be the holy grail. I'm optimistic. Things are moving so fast.
He's 3 stone.
No.
20 kilograms or something, isn't
I'm
it?
not 2 stone.
3. Get your mum to do you up, shall we?
3.
Yeah, I'll do mum.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now the other thing That I'm not sure whether we've talked through completely is the genetic issues. You know that we actually managed to identify exactly what his genetic defect was, and that he actually has a deletion, which is a little bit missing in the gene which causes this Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, and that we know that you're a carrier of it. Yes. Right. Now, do you understand all the implications of that? Now, if you were to decide to have another child, we would be in a position to offer you prenatal testing if that was what you decided you wanted.
All right. Hello, Dominic. Come on in. Hiya. Where are you sitting?
The Halls have 2 boys. Dominic is the elder. He has a particularly grim form of MPS called Sanfilippo syndrome. Among other symptoms, he will always be difficult to control. Sometimes he will be violent.
Sit wherever you want.
He will only calm down when, towards the end of a short life, he begins to deteriorate.
You sit there, that's a good boy.
Right. How old's Oliver now?
The Halls knew that if they had another child, there was an even chance that it would happen again.
How's he been?
Not too bad.
All of the parents who have children with MPS disorders will receive expert genetic counselling. They will be told the risks of recurrence in future pregnancies, and they will be told about the options for prenatal testing and what's involved in prenatal testing. And then they decide whether or not that's for them or whether or not they wish to take the risk.
And some do.
And some do.
Oliver was actually an accident. He wasn't planned. But once I found out that I was pregnant, then, yes, obviously I was concerned. I could have had a test on it 9 weeks, but we decided not to go ahead with the test because I didn't feel that I could have a termination. So we decided to trust to luck and hope that things would turn out okay. Unfortunately it didn't, and Oliver has the same condition. I'm not against abortion in any way. It's just my personal decision. And Eddie's, we spoke about it. We just decided that it's something we couldn't do. Life is precious no matter.
You go, Richard. Just Richard. Off you go.
The idea that some lives might be screened out before birth to the supposed improvement of the human race was once popular in America, Germany, and here. It has never quite died out. Nowadays in this country, such decisions are left to the parents.
There's a tendency to think, well, you know, as long as it's all individual choice, then everything's okay. We're not going to end up doing anything like the Nazis did. We're going to be okay as long as we leave these decisions up to individuals. But even an individual's decision is not always a free decision. There are all kinds of pressures that are likely to be coercive in the future. People will feel that they have to act in certain ways, that they shouldn't bring certain kinds of children into the world. They should bring other kinds of children into the world.
Genetics give not just ourselves, but other people dangerous knowledge. Who should see our genetic profile? The police? Our employers? The insurance companies? Hazel Connor is the picture of health. She runs for her county. But she has an inherited disposition to a heart defect.
I was actually turned down flatly last week for a mortgage repayment policy on the grounds of health. End of conversation, they wouldn't enter into any catalogue with me, you know.
Was that because they'd examined you and found something wrong with you, or because you just indicated that you had some genetic defects?
I wish they would let me go for a medical. I actually asked if I could go for a medical. It's what it was on the mortgage application form. You know, you sort of, there's one little box that says, are you under a consultant, or have you been to a consultant in the last year, or whatever. And, you know, I put yes, you know, because I actually see my consultant once a year. And that was my downfall.
Insurance companies are not the welfare state. They want to know as much about us as possible before they issue a policy, in order to assess the risk. But suppose there is no risk. They're looking for a genetic test that will tell them when you are going to become ill and when you are going to die. Will some people become uninsurable, an underclass because of the alarming precision of the new science?
The precision is, yes, exactly what a lot of this research will bring us, to be able to predict a little bit more clearly, more rationally, and therefore be able to do a more professional job equitably for all our policyholders. And it will affect everybody. You cannot stop science marching on. Historically, it has never happened. And it isn't halted by the fear of unpleasant consequences.
And change.
The areas which seem to be most threatening to people are, first of all, the area of screening the idea that an insurance company is going to get hold of your specific genetic message and therefore it will be able to decide whether or not it's going to insure you. To my mind, that's pretty fatuous because it doesn't show a good understanding of how genes actually work. Genes only give some degree of knowledge of a predisposition. But of course, in order for those genes to actually work in that particular way, you need to have all sorts of environmental factors. And those environmental factors, with that knowledge, you can actually change those environmental factors. So you can actually use that screening knowledge to positive advantage for the individual concerned.
I think we're very fortunate here still to have a comprehensive health service that looks after you, however severe your disease, whether it's genetic or not. And that means, or should mean, that we get the coverage whether we've got an inherited disease or not. And I think that's terribly important. And a country that doesn't have a comprehensive health insurance plan, I think has a lot of problems in deciding how to deal with what in principle would have to be different premiums according to your genetic makeup.
MPS is extremely rare, but a gene therapy treatment for it would echo through the medical world, opening up possibilities for treating many other diseases as well. It remains a tantalizing goal.
The Childhood Wood is here primarily to celebrate the lives of all the children that have died from mucopolysaccharide diseases. It's a place for parents and families to come, to spend time, to remember their child. And it's a place for life as well, as we watch the trees develop and grow. Every tree here that's planted is an experiment in itself. They're cloned from the great oak of Sherwood Forest. We're on the search for a genetic cure through looking at DNA, and the trees are actually cloned from DNA from the great oak. Every day I'm confronted with the telephone ringing, telling me there's a new diagnosis, there's an anxious mother on the phone, and she might be telling me her child is 9 months old or 18 months old or 2 years old. And I know in my heart there's absolutely nothing we can do at this moment in time, and that gene research is going to come too late for that child. So with every diagnosis, I know we will plant a tree. So I hope that gene research moves forward at a faster rate than it is now.
A little bit of jelly coming onto the bottom, all right?
Yeah.
Put my finger in first,
Yeah.
and then what I'm going to do is get the telescope to go over the tip of my finger.
Yeah.
So it's just popping in now, all right? And if you stay as you are a moment, while I just get everything...
MPS claims many of its victims in childhood. Cancer inflicts its damage mostly on adults.
There's really only one disease in which our understanding of the genetics is going to have an immediate effect in management, and that's familial polyposis. It's a rare condition which leads to cancer if it's not treated expeditiously. We now know that there is just one gene that becomes abnormal in that disease, and we can detect abnormalities in the laboratory and use diagnosis at the molecular level to make the diagnosis for potential patients.
Now there you are. That is a little polyp. This is real cancer prevention, you know, because you're getting these things at a very, very early stage before they can ever turn, which is good news. So it's about 3 millimeters, okay? Open. Close. Close, good. Dead. Take it out. And we've taken a biopsy off the top of it. So there you are. That's a dead polyp.
Over the past 10 years or so, our knowledge of the connection between cancer and changes in genes has moved forward enormously. We now know really quite clearly that most cancers arise because of damage to genes which change the behavior of cells. That's the basis for the causation of pretty well every cancer. And because of that understanding, we are moving towards a time when perhaps we can step in and alter the effect on genes from factors in the environment or hereditary factors, which may then lead on to treatment. But this is all great speculation towards the future.
Scientists have been looking for a breakthrough in cancer treatment for decades. One biotech company, Therapies, is putting its money on gene therapy.
In the future, it's going to be the only way forward. I mean, if you have a look at now how we treat cancer, it is crude, it is inefficient, and very often ineffective. And apart from that, how we treat patients with cancer at the moment causes very distressing side effects. I think we've all got family or friends who've had or have died from cancer, and you've seen the results of the chemotherapy. And the problem here, of course, is that existing treatments give little or no specificity. They do kill the tumour cells, but they also kill the normal cells, and that's what causes the major side effects in patients with cancer. And what I think gene therapy hopes would enable us to do is to get the specificity, not simply for targeting the tumour cells, but for also protecting the normal tissues from some of the toxic effects of the chemicals that we are using.
After they are satisfied with safety and progress in the labs, the people at Therapies will start rigorous clinical trials, that is, testing the treatment on patients.
I would hope to start, obviously, clinical trials within the near future. It will not be 2001, it will certainly be within months rather than years. In terms of the time frame when patients with cancer will be taking genes as part of overall treatment for cancer, once again, I think that this will certainly be before the year 2000, before it becomes a fairly general treatment for cancer. Now, I want to stress that this will not be a treatment on its own. It will form part of a treatment also involving surgery, involving radiation therapy, and also involving chemotherapy. So we've got to see this as part of an overall treatment for cancer, as we would also see it in the future, as an overall treatment for heart disease and for other major diseases.
Therapies was funded originally by the government's Medical Research Council. It now has eager backers in the city. Biotech companies all over the world are in fierce competition to be the first to combat genetically the major illnesses, not just cancer, that afflict human beings. It's a global business, at the heart of which is the patent. Patents are filed for processes that may create fortunes for shareholders. Patents have even been taken out on individual human genes, just because they might be scientifically useful one day. Politicians are passing a lot of the astronomical cost of genetic research onto private enterprise. The Human Genome Project is slipping away from the control of governments. This is the Sanger Centre, near Cambridge. It is funded by the Medical Research Council, and in large part, the Wellcome Trust. The director declined an invitation and big money to work in America. He believes in a public role in science, and he doesn't think much of the scramble for patents.
If you take a human gene and you ring-fence it with a license for 20 years or something by one company then they have the control over that. In my simple-minded way, I take the view that the human genome should not be bought and sold. In fact, I would just say that I suspect that a generation, a century hence, will look back on this age and say that was the age when they bought and sold human genes. Very much as we look back on now, on the slave trade, as we say, they used to buy and sell people. Can you imagine such a thing?
John Selston's field of study is the nematode worm. He is a world authority on its uncomplicated ways. How does a worm fit in with the Human Genome Project?
If we understand the worm, which is an animal with approximately 1,000 cells, we shall be a very long way towards understanding our own physiology. And the reason for that is that many of the basic pieces of biological mechanism are found throughout life. In fact, something like 30% of our genes will be found in some form in the nematode as well. The driving force for me, although I think the medical spin-offs are wonderful, it's the understanding of life, which is really what motivates me. And in that, the worm and the human are at one. To understand the worm is to understand an animal, and to understand us in all our detail, which we may take another few hundred years, is perhaps the greatest challenge of all.
We now know that the relationship between man and the rest of nature is very strong. We share genes with plants. We share genes with animals. The food we eat is sometimes genetically engineered, whether we are told about it or not. Animals can be genetically engineered to provide medicine, or modified so that their organs can be used in human operations.
Technically, transplanting a pig heart into a human being is no different from transplanting a human heart. The problem resides in the patient's response to that heart. It's a process we call hyperacute rejection. And we set out to develop genetic therapies applied to the pig that would conquer this complement-mediated destruction of the pig heart or the pig kidney. And that's what we've achieved.
The doctors are almost ready to perform animal-to-human transplants. But a government go-ahead has been delayed while potential problems are scrutinised further.
There are some concerns about the possibility of introducing a new virus into the human population. We don't know where AIDS came from, but it's here, and it's a global menace now. One thing we're sure about is that the original virus, which gave rise to HIV, was an animal virus, and there are many animal viruses that may well be capable of making a cross-species switch if they are introduced in bulk into human beings. In fact, it's one of the quickest ways, the classic way, to produce a major viral mutation is to take a virus from one animal and push it into another. We've seen it with BSE.
I think people have concerns, particularly when they can't see something, and genetic engineering is difficult to see. When there are images of making sort of humanized pigs, which is not what we're doing. We're not making pigs human in any way, or Frankensteinian images or whatever. And people have preconceived notions of what genetic engineering does. And so I can understand why they have concerns.
The Roslin Institute was set up in Scotland by the post-war government to develop scientific methods to help British agriculture. The emphasis was on livestock improvement. Man has been crossbreeding animals for millennia, but genetic engineering is much more radical, much more effective. We can now shape and manipulate animals in very direct ways so that they serve our own purposes. Like all such places, Roslin is sternly regulated. Inspectors call unannounced to make sure that the scientific procedures are carried out correctly and humanely. And Roslin is famous. A year ago, it announced that a team of scientists there had done something that most people thought was impossible. It had cloned 2 sheep in the laboratory from a single embryo. They were genetically identical. A patent was filed. Morag and Megan were the first successfully cloned animals in the world. Their arrival was greeted with amazement and unease.
We saw this wonderful publication from Edinburgh of the cloning of the sheep. Now, when you look at the press comment, you cannot but be appalled at the negative attitude that the press had. This was an amazing British achievement at the very best of British science, and yet it was seen in some ways some kind of threat to the fabric of our society.
I think that we expected some of the more sensational approaches, but were disappointed at the comparative lack of interest in the potential applications of these techniques, because this, in a few years' time, will be opening up some real opportunities for biological research. The thing which will perhaps give the greatest benefit in the near future is that we have the opportunity to introduce precise genetic change into the livestock, and this will open up a whole area of biological research which will be of value not only in agriculture but also in medicine as well. One of the applications will be in using this to study some human conditions which cause such distress in young children is caused by an error in one particular genetic component. Now, it's not easy to study this in human beings. It would be appropriate to think of studying it in sheep. The lungs and the respiratory tract in sheep is very similar to that in the human beings. This is a significant step forward, and the British taxpayer who paid for much of this research should actually feel proud of what we've achieved.
Wilmot has successfully cloned more sheep since then.
There were 2 aspects of the research that were important to the public. One was that nuclei were being transferred from cells that had grown in culture. This had never been done before. And this is the whole concept of cloning. And it opened the whole feeling that it's going to be possible to clone a new organism from a cell grown from an existing one. And that was a breakthrough, and as well as being a breakthrough, of course, that caused some concern, the whole idea of possibly in the long run cloning human beings.
If you wanted to clone people, Wilmot's first techniques had their limits. He had used cells from an embryo. Mature cells are no good, or so it was thought, because they've become what's called differentiated, switched off. You can't switch them back on again for cloning duties. You can only have Megan and Morag, not Hitler or Einstein, because by the time you know you want to clone Hitler or Einstein, their cells have differentiated. It's too late. It's not an idea that appeals to many people anyway, but the road to a nightmarish brave new world inhabited by clones seemed to be blocked. Only now, it isn't. Wilmot and his team have unblocked it. They have, once again, done the impossible. They have taken a mature, differentiated cell from a 5-year-old ewe, switched it on again, and suddenly everything is different. They take the nuclei from a donor embryo. These have been multiplied, cloned, in the lab. These cells are then placed next to an unfertilized egg from which all genetic information has been removed. For the egg to develop into an embryo shaped by the original cloned cell, there is one last vital stage. The genetic information from the cloned cell is introduced into the unfertilized egg by a finely judged electrical current, the moment when life is created. The first animal in the world to be cloned from mature cells is called Dolly, the one in the middle. Is that homely name reassuring?
Human beings have never had the ability to alter the very basis of life on Earth, but that is what science now presents us with. Now, these are very big, new steps. They are fraught with ethical questions, and they are ones which most people haven't yet thought through.
I don't see why the new genetic engineering shouldn't have a tremendous impact on the whole business of longevity if we wanted it to. And I don't see why, in principle, you couldn't have human beings living effectively forever.
Just supposing you could find the aging gene and you knew it. You're never going to be able to unknow it. And if you know it, then what are you going to do with this piece of knowledge? I think it could be very dangerous. Think it through. If you could find, if you knew you could change so that you didn't age, there would be wars fought about it.
Genes are at our beginning and our end. Can they delay that end? Can they retard or give understanding of the diseases and dementias of old age?
The genetics of Alzheimer's disease is something that has been advanced considerably in the last 5 years. We do see, thankfully rarely, some patients in their 30s, 40s and early 50s, often who come from families in which the disease appears to be a familial or hereditary condition.
Morning. Are you right? Are you going to... I saved you a seat. My name is Carol Jennings. I work for the Alzheimer's Disease Society. My job title is Coordinator for Younger People with Dementia, which... My grandfather was in his late 50s, I think, when he had symptoms of it. And of course, we had no idea then. We just know he went a bit funny and thought it was because he was gassed in the war. And that was a very logical explanation, and seemed, everyone accepted that. And since the research team have looked at the family, they found my grandfather did in fact have Alzheimer's disease, and his mother. So they've traced the family back, and my grandfather had brothers who've had it, and therefore there are distant cousins with Alzheimer's. And the family tree is quite horrendous to look at, really. An awful lot of people who have been affected by the disease.
In some of these families, we know what the gene is, we know what the fault or the mutation is, and it is possible to screen for that in young adults at the age before they may get the disease. And that's very similar to the example with Huntington's disease, where one can do the same. And clinical geneticists can offer this service with very careful counselling before and after such testing. And people may choose to avail themselves of that for planning for the future and planning whether they will have a family.
We thought it would be possible in the future for us to have a predictive test to tell us whether we were going to develop it or not. I think there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, if they tell me I'm going to get it, is it really going to make any difference? And I feel that I can live with that not knowing, really.
As well as giving understanding of Alzheimer's, genes may one day be the basis for a therapy to control it. Scientists like Geraldine Lally at the Babraham Institute are working with transgenic mice whose memories have been genetically modified, trying to find a way forward. Could it go further than that? There are some scientists who say we could live to be 400 years old. Would we want to?
People don't want to live to be 103 and be crippled. They want to be in discos, in Tiffany's, in Cardiff and London, dancing till they're 98 and then drop dead at the bar. So they've had a fabulous quality of life, and scientists are working towards that, directly or indirectly, by creating these medicines, getting over cardiovascular disease, getting over Alzheimer's, obviously trying to prevent cancers, etc.
There are people who claim that there are genetic predispositions to aging, and that we might be able to modify our aging, and that we might expect to live longer simply because we could generate a population in time that was able to age without some of the genetic effects that we see. I'm a bit sceptical about it. In a way, I think it's quite a good thing, because it would seem to me that one of the things that, I said that we don't value scientists. We actually don't value people who are a bit old in our society either. I mean, that's quite in contradistinction to many other so-called more primitive societies, which quite clearly do value the wisdom of age, but accept that it might be given in different ways, the wisdom of experience.
As the molecular cosmos within us reveals its mysteries, the opportunities offered by genetic science seem almost without limits. But is the price of progress going to be a high one? Are there areas of science best left alone? Is cloning one step too many into an unknown world?
The question is, can we use the same technique in humans? The answer is almost certainly yes. What we need to do, first of all, is to take cells from a human fetus, grow them in the laboratory until they become a cell line, take one of those cells, put it next to an unfertilized human egg, pass the little spark of electricity across, and watch them fuse together.
The point about things like cloning and genetic engineering is that they are difficult, but only for technical reasons. They don't break any laws of physics, and the technical reasons are being steadily overcome. So one has to say, okay, human cloning at the moment, in the way that it has been done with sheep already, is not actually at this moment probably can't be done. But if people wanted to and they developed the techniques, there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be done in 10 years or in 20 years or whatever.
I think that we have to accept that it is a possibility. We can see no reason why you would apply this technology, even if it will work in humans, to make a copy of one human being. We can see no reason to do that. There are no clinical reasons to do it, and it would, of course, be socially unacceptable. It is also a fact that in Britain, and I think most of the European and most developed countries, it is already illegal.
I can see some very good uses for genetic engineering beyond any doubt, and some real downsides. One of the things that's theoretically a downside is simply that, as it were, bad people have big ideas about themselves, and you really can envisage that people like Saddam Hussein and Bokassa and so on might think that they're so important that they ought to clone themselves and pass on a few absolute copies, absolute facsimiles for posterity, and a few more thousand they might think would be a good idea. And I think there are always people who, for enough money, would be willing to help them to fulfill their dream. People invoke the idea of Frankenstein at this point, where Dr. Frankenstein creates a monster which gets out of hand and he can no longer control. In a sense, the real irony of that, and the terribly interesting thing about it, is that Dr. Frankenstein was not himself a bad person. Dr. Frankenstein actually wanted to help the human race, as he made clear from the very beginning. I mean, he was benign, and yet it went wrong, the road to hell paved with good intentions. And one really does have to be very, very careful indeed.
There is the fear that we will produce monsters. That's extraordinarily unlikely. We may get a failure of development. We may get offspring that have not managed to complete development normally, and so they die. But this image of monster is not going to happen.
And so cells from the fallopian tube of a superovulating animal are removed and go to the lab to be used for cloning, for science, for progress. The world's great religions have little directly to say about these things, but many people feel that with genetic engineering, some sort of religious taboo is being broken.
I think that the view of these people have of the world is so totally different from the one that I have. I don't have a religious belief. That whilst I understand that they have this concern, it's not one that I can share. I think that we have our feeling of awe about the world in thinking about the mechanisms which are going on in the embryos and in the sheep. It is truly amazing that there are mechanisms in the cells, in the embryos that we've made, that regulate the production of offspring.
What I want to suggest is not at all, in fact, that one wants simply to re-invoke ancient religions which were devised by other people in another age, but I think one does want to rediscover the essence of what those people had, which was the sense that they lived in a universe, they were a part of the universe, and that their proper attitude towards the universe as a whole should be one of awe and should be one of reverence, and that one should not simply be taking the universe by the scruff of the neck and seeing what you could get out of it.
It's very easy to say knowledge is a dangerous thing, and that we're finding out all sorts of things that we were better not to know, and we gain powers that we perhaps ought not to have. People will say it's like the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and you get the evil along with the good. But nevertheless, I cannot imagine any other way forward than to increase our knowledge and understanding of the universe. I mean, that must be the most appropriate and tangible destiny of the human race, as far as I'm concerned.
I think gene therapy can only occur if society is ready for it, if society wants it, and actually believes that it's a rational form of treatment. There has to be an ethical debate within society, not driven by the doctors or the scientists. It has to comprise all of society.
We did hope that if treatment became available, then they would be able to have it. But they are now so far down the line with the disease. Even if somebody miraculously came up with some treatment today, it would still have to take time, and it would probably almost certainly be too late for our boys now.
Clearest benefits come from recognizing those families whose lives have been terribly changed because of the birth of a child who has never been able to develop normally. Those are the most obvious benefits. We don't yet have a whole new set of cures for major human diseases. We don't know whether we're going to get that. If that does happen, it will be really wonderful. It really will diminish human suffering. But because those benefits are uncertain, it's very hard to balance the good that will come out of this of a practical nature against the foreseeable troubles that could affect and afflict people. It seems to me that we should go ahead in the hope of great good and at the same time try to forestall the harms that could occur by social measures.
May you take some comfort from this very special place, from the fact that your child will always be remembered here. I hope that in the future, the medical profession will be able to find a way of preventing this terrible disease. May this childhood wood always be a peaceful and resting place for the souls of your children.